So, as far as the darshanas are concerned, there are several concepts that are of immense utility to the aspects of computer science as we know today. I will talk about two important points in this regard and then conclude my presentation. The first aspect is what was earlier known as hermeneutics in philosophical parlance. Today, in the context of computer science, it is called as discourse analysis. As I mentioned in the first portion of my talk, discourse analysis is one of the most challenging tasks that a computer has to accomplish as part of artificial intelligence. Because when a discourse, it might be either in the form of a audio speech, or it might be in the form of a text which runs into several paragraphs or several pages or any other medium for that matter. How to understand what is the purport of the passage or purport of the discourse. What are the parameters that one has to take into account when a person has to analyze the discourse in the proper manner? In this context, the Mīmāṃsā Shastra has a great deal to contribute, because the entire science and art of Mimamsa Shastra is the science and art of interpretation. Many a times when there is a large or huge discourse, it is quite natural that some mutually contradictory aspects come into them. So, for example, a person might be talking about why a person should always speak the truth. But in the course of the talk, he might also say there are several exceptions to this rule. Because we all know, in all cases, always the exception proves the rule. That's why it is mentioned as every rule has an exception. And these discourses might have several repetitions. They might have sometimes something that might not fit into the context, etc. So, Mīmāṃsā Shastra gives us specific parameters with regard to how a discourse has to be analyzed. And this is known as hermeneutics as far as the philosophy of interpretation is concerned. So in the Mīmāṃsā Shastra, it is specifically mentioned, Upakramopasamharo abhyasaha apurvata phalam arthavada upapatti cha lingam tatparya nirnaye. The Mīmāṃsā Shastra gives 6 specific parameters as far as analyzing a discourse is concerned. And the 6 parameters are as follows. This can be applied to any document or any discourse for that matter, and we can examine how it is valid. So the parameters are as follows. Upakramopasamharo. So first you have to see what is there in the introduction and also the conclusion. So if it's a proper discourse, both the introduction and conclusion should be in line with each other. They should corroborate. So you can, if it is a proper discourse and it is well prepared, then the purport of the discourse can, one of the most important aspects that can give us the purport of the discourse are the Upakrama and Upasamhara, that is the introduction and conclusion. So today, when we actually study the articles, peer-reviewed articles that appear in journals, first an abstract is given, then an introduction is given. After the introduction comes, you have the body of the text, you have the body of the article, and after the body of the article, finally you have the conclusion. You say all the aspects that have been mentioned in the introduction have been proved. And so this is how I have put forward my theory or something like that. So the first parameter to analyze the purport of the discourse is Upakrama and Upasamhara both together. These two form one single parameter according to Mīmāṃsā Shastra, which is in the fitness of things, because these two together, so always the introduction and conclusion have to be they have to be in line with each other. They should not contradict each other. In fact, they should be almost one and the same. Then Upakrama Upasamharo, this is the first parameter. The second parameter is Abhyasa. Abhyasa is a repeated reiteration or repeated mentioning of the main point. So, for example, I come across a news item today. So, he will say Donald Trump announced that H-1B visas will be cancelled or they will be reduced by such a large particular percentage. So, he says Americans are losing jobs, so I am doing this. Further, unemployment is increasing in India, in United States, so I am doing this. So he actually gives valid reasons and says, this is why I am doing this, this is why I am doing this, this is why I am doing this. So the focal point of the discourse is repeated again and again as per requirement. This is known as Abhyasa. This is the second parameter in analyzing and finding out the purport of the discourse. Third aspect is phalam. What is the main intention of the discourse? Who is the target audience? And what should the target audience know? What should be the takeaway of the target audience after he studies or listens to this discourse? That is the third parameter that is known as phalam. Then fourth one is Arthavada. Arthavada means anecdotes that actually are mentioned in course of the discourse to drive home the point. Therefore, many times when a very serious discourse is being given in a scientific forum, the scientist may talk about some instance that is very thought-provoking, not only thought-provoking, it's also very nice to listen to. It might be in the form of a story, it might be in the form of an event that occurred or something like that, which we call as anecdotes. So these anecdotes, many a times, what is mentioned very seriously may not catch the imagination of the audience, but what is mentioned by means of an anecdote, immediately it may appeal to the audience. So this is known as Arthavada in Sanskrit, especially in Mīmāṃsā Shastra, where certain happenings in the forms of stories, etc., are mentioned to drive home the point. So these anecdotes, which are known as Arthavada, play a very important role. So this is a very important parameter as far as discourse analysis is concerned. Then you have what is known as Upapatti. So if a point has to be driven home, it also needs to have logical reasons behind it. So unless the logical reasons are enumerated in a systematic manner, the point or the concept cannot be accepted as trustworthy, as proven, and it will not actually appeal to the minds of people who are logical thinkers. So every discourse has to have, and if it's a proper discourse, it will have the logical reasons to prove what needs to be proven. So this upapatti is another very important parameter as far as the analysis of discourse is concerned. So we say upakramopasamharo abhyasaha apurvata phalam arthava, and apurvata is synonym. So many a times we come across several discourses which have nothing new to say. So we actually look at something new that we want to know when we actually read an article in a journal or in a very serious publication. If it mentions about something that the target audience already knows very well, then the people in the audience will say, oh, it's all a repetition of what we already know. Why take so much effort to repeat something that is already known? Therefore, it is very important for an article or a discourse to drive home the point by mentioning what is newly to be known, that is known as apurva. And when a discourse has to be analyzed in the proper manner, one has to look at the unique aspects that are mentioned, which are not mentioned elsewhere in the discourse, to properly analyze it. So, upakramopasamharo abhyasaha apurvata phalam arthavadaha upapatticha lingam tatparya nirnaye. And these 6 parameters can be universally applied to any discourse, as I mentioned earlier. But it is all the more valid as far as discourse analysis as part of artificial intelligence and computer science is concerned. Like this, several other concepts. For example, the relationship between the part and the whole, which we call as avayava avayavi bhava in Sanskrit. So many a times people think that the whole is equal to the sum of the parts, which is propounded by some Indian philosophical systems. Whereas, for example, the Nyaya system says it is not equal to the sum of the parts, but it is much more than that. It cannot be quantified in mathematical terms, but in terms of objects, when we actually talk about the relationship between the part and the whole, which is a very burning issue as far as several aspects associated with computational linguistics, computational physics, computational chemistry, etc. are concerned. This is a very, very important concept. It has to be elaborated in great detail, because first we have to understand what is the modern thought on this topic, what is the ancient thought, how ancient thought is well developed, more developed than the modern system of thought. This is one very important aspect. Similarly, when we talk about the theories of language, especially we have 2 important concepts in the darshanas called the Abhihitanmayavada and Anvitabhidhanavada. So suppose I read a sentence which has about 15 words. It has been proven that the mind cannot actually at a time grasp more than 2 or 3 words. But when I read a sentence which has 15 words, still I make out the meaning, provided I have necessary language expertise. If this has to be replicated in the computers, what has to be done? So we call it as semantic nets. So suppose I have a long sentence which I would like to once again explain it in greater detail with examples. So it is said that we first actually understand the meaning of individual words. One theory says that we first understand the meaning of the individual words and then associate them with each other. It is known as the constru or anvaya in Sanskrit. So first, whether the constru is known first and then the meanings are known, or whether the meanings are known first and then the constru is formed. This is a matter of great debate in the darshanas. While the Nyaya system says the Abhihitanvayavada is correct, which means that first you understand the meanings of the individual words and then correlate them with each other. The Mīmāṃsā system says you first correlate the words and then understand them. So we have to examine several examples if we have to know how exactly the human mind understands the sentence, analyzes the sentence, understands it, etc., which can then be replicated in the computers. So this understanding of the human mind, or rather the mapping of the human mind, is very important, because all the things that are all human behaviors that are replicated in computers are done on the basis of the analysis of human behavior. Another very important application of the darshanas to the modern context, especially the computer science, is the field of knowledge engineering, as it is known. Today we have millions and millions of computer programs that do analytical jobs. How the programs are written, what is the basis on which these programs are written? So first, the algorithms are prepared. It says if it is so, first you take this as an input. If it is so, you do this. If it is A, you do this. If it is B, you do this. Then if it is A, so many possibilities, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If it is 1, so many sub-possibilities, sub-possibilities, etc. But before the algorithms are prepared, the computer scientist or the systems analyst or whatever he is known, he has to engineer the knowledge according to the needs of the program, according to the needs of the end user. So what he has to do is he has to sit with the domain expert. And suppose a person is preparing a software for analysis of health conditions. And then he also suggests he is preparing an intelligent system which actually plays the role of a doctor at the primary level. So first he says these are the symptoms. If this is the symptom, these are the possibilities. And if these are the possibilities, then these could be the probable diseases which are afflicting this person. So then you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you check all the parameters. So if a software engineer has to prepare this software, first he has to sit with the domain expert and then engineer the knowledge. He has to suitably alter, not with regard to facts, but he has to bend the knowledge to suit the manner in which the computer programs are developed. So this is known as knowledge engineering, wherein the computer scientist or a computer programmer sits with the domain expert and understands all that needs to be understood and then converts it into a program. So I had earlier presented a paper in one of the transdisciplinary seminars wherein it was mentioned about how the Nyaya system and the Mīmāṃsā systems can give a checklist for a knowledge engineer to correctly understand what the domain expert is saying, and without altering the basic knowledge in any way, he alters the structure of the knowledge and prepares it in such a way that the program can be prepared in a very foolproof, bug-proof manner. So this aspect is known as knowledge engineering. So we know environmental engineering, we know genetic engineering, we know engineering in aerospace engineering, space engineering. But one of the very important applications of artificial intelligence is knowledge engineering, wherein the computer scientist who wants to make the computer understand a highly deep and highly complicated knowledge system engineers the knowledge that he has acquired from a domain expert to suit the programming needs. In this context, the Nyaya and Mīmāṃsā systems, especially those that are mentioned in the context of the Anumana Prakarana or the inference mechanisms, we call them as inference mechanisms. These are of utmost relevance. So like this, there are several aspects with which the ancient darshanas of the Indian knowledge systems, the concepts mentioned by them, can be applied for the benefit of several theories that are associated with artificial intelligence and computer science. These are highly technical in nature and they need to be explained in great detail to make real sense, for which we require probably a series of lectures. Today I have just touched upon them in a very cursory manner. I have just mentioned a few of them. Like this, there are several other theories and also fields. For example, data compression, information compression, knowledge compression. Today, when we zip files during WinZip or RAR or something like that, it is data compression. But computer scientists have different levels of knowledge like data, knowledge, intelligence, wisdom, etc. So we see that our ancient sages were involved in the field, in the process of, they were experts in the process of knowledge compression. How to compress knowledge? How to put an entire body of knowledge in a small capsule? This is one of the fields that our ancient forefathers have excelled in. And that is very much relevant to today's world. Because today we have a huge amount of data, a huge amount of information, which cannot be easily analyzed, and we cannot actually lay our hands on the exact point of information or knowledge that we require. So knowledge compression plays a very important role in this context. And we see that when we see the Brahma Sutras encapsulate within them the entire knowledge of the Vedas and the Upanishads. So it is, in a way, nothing but knowledge compression only. Can these techniques be used in the context of artificial intelligence? The answer is yes, but great efforts are to be put in to realize the results. Like this, there are several other aspects which I would like to mention if given an opportunity in another context. I hope the listeners who will be listening to it whenever and wherever, they will appreciate what our ancient forefathers have had to contribute, or are still able to contribute even to a highly modernistic field or futuristic field like computer science. I hope you have had some glimpses into this aspect. And I am extremely thankful to the Atharva Forum. Questions, if any, are most welcome. Interactions are also welcome. And we would be very happy if enthusiasts who are interested in this field join with us to take forward our activity in this field. Thank you very much.